Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for Fantasy Premier League content for the 2021-22 season. My name is Dan and welcome to a Gameweek 32 preview stream. Yes, Gameweek 32. Sorry, I'm a little bit late, just a couple of minutes late, just because I had the wrong thumbnail set on the video. It is definitely Gameweek 32 and definitely not Gameweek 31. Don't worry about that. You haven't dreamt that we're in a different game week. We are here. So basically, guys, we are going to be doing a preview stream today, covering a whole bunch of different preview topics that we're all very interested in ahead of the Game Week 32 deadline. Since I'm making this a little bit more of a regular thing, like I thought it would be, this kind of stream would be a one-off, but I seem to be doing this every week at the moment. I'm quite enjoying doing these preview streams, so I'm going to start trying to add a little bit of structure to these streams. So I've got some different topics of discussion that I think would be really interesting, and we're going to try and break it up a little bit, go through some different topics, and then at the end of the stream we'll just do a general Q&A for you guys to ask whatever questions you want, and we'll try and answer them in as much detail as possible. It'll be a little bit less frantic than the deadline streams, I suppose. And yeah, hopefully we're going to start developing this into a bit of a show in a way. It will eventually start maybe getting some co-hosts involved as well. So I'm just going to try and develop this, you know, into a little bit of a series, into a bit of a show ready. So by the time next season rolls around, we'll actually have a really good weekly stream to do, which I think could be pretty fun. So yeah, that's basically the plan, guys. Hopefully that's all good with you. We are going to go through some topics. We'll start them in a minute. Just quickly to say, I don't know if you guys saw my team selection video, but yes, I finished the game week on 71 points, which I am so happy about, up to 159th overall rank. The goal is still to finish in top 1k. Still want to finish in the top 1k. That's not changed. But, you know, if we could potentially push for top 100, that would be absolutely wicked. But I'm certainly not expecting that by any stretch of the imagination. So, guys, let me get up my notes and we'll go through some of the topics that I have planned out this very morning. So, first of all, I just want to go through a couple of teams, a kind of spotlight on a couple of teams, talk a little bit about team news, injuries and stuff like that. There's only a couple of teams I've written down some notes on, so if there's any other teams you wanted me to talk about, do let me know. But I'm going to start off by talking about Arsenal. You know, they are my team, so it makes sense that I probably know a little bit about what's going on there. So what the situation with Arsenal is kind of interesting. So we've got Tierney out for the season. We've got Tomiyasu still out, and we've got Thomas Partey who's not looking good either. So I am wondering if there is going to be a few problems in terms of keeping clean sheets from here until the end of the season, just because those are some major missing players, you know, all coming in at once. And Arsenal don't have a particularly deep squad, do they, at the moment? Which is it is what it is. Thankfully, Arsenal are playing Brighton this game week, and because they're playing Brighton this game week, I don't want you guys to worry about Arsenal too much. Brighton are really bad. I expect that the Crystal Palace performance was a one-off, and there will be a big reaction, I suppose, from Arsenal this game week. Because I think we're going to be good there. If I'm honest, and the following game week is obviously a double game week, so you don't want to be removing your Arsenal players, certainly. But what I would say, you know, I know a lot of people are kind of thinking about what are the ramifications of these injuries, and I can try and maybe give my take on it. So, first of all, I've seen a few people suggesting that Saka will play at left back. That's just not happening. It's not happening. Saka is not going to play at left back unless Arsenal change formation. You know, it doesn't make sense for Arsenal's best player, I mean, let's be real, best outfield player, certainly, to go into such a deep position, particularly the way Arsenal play at the moment. The fullbacks are actually not advancing too far up the pitch. So unless there's a major shift in tactics, which I don't think there will be, since the current tactics have worked pretty well so far, Saka is not going to go at left back. If we maybe went to a 3 at the back formation, then I could see Saka playing left mid there. Or I could see, if we were, you know, chasing a game or something like that, maybe formations change later on in the game, like we kind of saw it against Crystal Palace. We saw Saka kind of go to a left wing back position. I can kind of see it happening in that situation, but at the start of a game, you know, particularly against a game where we're expected to go up early, I don't really think that Saka is going to play left back. I think he's going to be remaining in that right wing position. A few people thinking about going for Tavares. Tavares is obviously a very, very cheap player. I mean, how much is he? He's got to be like 4.3 million. Let's have a quick look, because I know a few people have spoken about, oh, is it worth getting him in? The short answer is no. Well, I can't even find him. Here he is. 4.3 million, yeah. So the short answer for me is no. He put in a pretty poor performance, to be honest, against Crystal Palace. He just didn't really work next to Gabriel. Gabriel's a little bit too aggressive for like a Tavares, who's not quite as good at covering, or kind of recovery runs and stuff like that. So I'm not really sure that he's going to be playing too often. He may get some game time, but just as likely, I think we might see Holding come in at centre-back, Ben White go to right back, and Cedric go to left back, because Cedric has, of course, played a lot of games for Arsenal at left back, so I can see that happening as well. So yeah, no Saka at left back. Tavares, I don't even think he's nailed at left back. I can see Cedric going in at left back there, and actually Ben White moving to the right back position with Holding going into centre back. I know a few people are worried a little bit about Martinelli. Obviously, Martinelli did not start last game week, and people kind of thought, oh my god, is Smith Rowe going to be coming back into the team? I don't think so. I think the reason why we saw Martinelli drop out of the team just for one game week was just purely because he'd been international duty. He'd only just come back from international duty, and there was not much time to recover there from that long trip all the way from South America. So I do wonder if, he was just being rested just because of that, and he's going to come straight back in, because at the end of the day, if we kind of look at through Martinelli and how often he's been playing, it's been every week. Every week he's been available. So the only two games that he hasn't played since game week 14. So game week 14, since then, you can see the games he didn't play. Brentford, because he had just got a red card, so he wasn't available. He was suspended for that game. And Aston Villa, where he had COVID. I believe it was COVID, wasn't it? It was COVID, sorry. And then, obviously, he only played the second half against Crystal Palace because there was that short turnaround between international duty and the game. So you can see very clearly here a very clear pattern of Martinelli pretty much starting pretty much every single game he's available for. Pretty much. Technically he was available for last game. That would be the only exception to the rule. And I don't see that becoming a trend, because he has been playing very well as well. So Martinelli is here to stay. I don't think Smith Rowe is suddenly going to become a answer or a solution or anything like that. Would not be really thinking about Smith Rowe. Stick with Martinelli. He is the one. Of course, Saka is probably the slightly better option, however, but there's not too much in it. We've got some more teams to go through, and we're going to talk about Tierney replacements. We're going to talk about Salah. We're going to talk about captains in a little bit. And we're going to do some score predictions as well before we open up the field to questions. But I'm going to just answer this super chat quickly here. After that, maybe, guys, if you could save your super chats till the end of the stream, so I don't miss them. But I have seen one now from Kenny, who says, Alonso to James and Jota to Maddison or Cornet. What do you reckon, mate? Any other options you'd recommend? Love your work, mate. Keep it up. Thank you very much, Kenny. What would I recommend? I like Alonso to James. I don't know if you need to make a double transfer there, to be honest. I don't think there's any real rush to go for Maddison or Cornet, although I have to say I will be talking about both Maddison and Cornet in just a short while. But yeah, Alonso to James looks good. If you do need to make a downgrade from Jota to Maddison or Cornet, then maybe you could. Maybe Harvey Barnes as well is worth a shout. I'm going to talk about them in a little bit more detail in a moment, but I'm not sure I'd be looking to do that downgrade unless I absolutely have to. In terms of midfielders, yes, Cornet is not a bad choice, but certainly probably not the top of my list. Maddison and Barnes are pretty high up on that list in terms of midfielders you want to go for, as is Havertz. Havertz is another midfielder you probably be quite keen to bring in at the moment. So maybe Havertz is one to consider as well if you can afford to go for him. But anyway, speaking of Chelsea. I do want to talk about Chelsea for a little bit. So Havertz and Reece James, they both played 90 minutes of football on Wednesday against Real Madrid. And obviously because Chelsea lost against Real Madrid 3-1, they are going to potentially have to go pretty strong again. They're going to have to, if they want to beat Real Madrid, they're going to have to play a pretty strong team, right? So that is definitely something that we need to be thinking about when it comes to picking Chelsea players. So, it's difficult because we saw Conte kind of spoke about the importance of this Southampton match. So he is, Conte and Chelsea, make no mistake, they are going to really want to win this game against Southampton. They're not completely guaranteed top four. I know they've got a 5-point cushion, but you would say that Chelsea are definitely not guaranteed top four. They are pretty, they're obvious favourites, but they're not guaranteed it, right? So they are going to need to win their games. They are still going to have to play a fairly strong team for these Premier League games. But what we have to remember is just because Conte is, saying, oh, this is a really important game, that doesn't necessarily mean that Conte is going to suddenly completely transform his style of management, which is, I don't know why I'm saying Conte. I mean Tuchel. Sorry, I'm thinking. Yeah, sorry, I do mean Tuchel. I do apologise. I don't know why I'm saying Conte. I'm thinking back to. I'm a few years behind. Sorry, Tuchel. It doesn't mean that the Tuchel is suddenly going to change his style of management, which involves heavy rotation, right? That is a epic FPL Mate moment there. So it doesn't mean Tuchel is suddenly going to change his management style, which is always very, very rotation heavy. So I know as FPL managers, we really want to take positives of this. We really want to think, okay, maybe Tuchel is actually going to start playing our players every week. But that might actually be a little bit of a pipe dream, because I know we desperately want that to happen. But just because of this Real Madrid game, just because we've got this Crystal Palace FA Cup game coming up, just because, there's just so much going on and so many important games for Chelsea, they kind of can't win in a way. They're in a kind of tricky situation where even if it wasn't Tuchel in management, they would still probably be rotating a little bit. But they do have Tuchel as manager, who is a rotation-based manager. So I know we want to think that he's not going to rotate anymore, but I just don't feel like they are going to. Now, that said, when we talk about Havertz and James in particular, I think we'll probably all agree, it's particularly if you've been watching Chelsea recently, you'll know that these two players have been Chelsea's best players recently. They have, haven't they? They've just been playing so well. Reece James, even in that Real Madrid game, you saw him taking shots on, creating chances. In the game against Brentford as well, even though Chelsea lost, you could still see that James in that second half when he came on, looking really, really good. Looking really good. So if anyone is going to start every game, it's got to be Havertz and James, because they are the two key players for Chelsea. So that's the flip side of it. Now, one thing that I would say on that is that although I do think Havertz, there's no reason for Havertz not to start. Well, there's little reason for Havertz not to start, assuming that he is a player who can keep up he's fit enough to play, twice a week, which I think there's no reasons to suggest that he might not be that kind of player. I know there's always a risk with Tuchel, that Lukaku can randomly come in, but Havertz has been crucial to Chelsea recently. Now, James, on the other hand, although he has been just as crucial, there is this thing whereby James has just returned from injury, and he keeps getting injured over and over and over again because he has been rushed back into this Chelsea team and playing too much football too quickly. Now, if I can work that out, if you guys can work that out, I'm sure, the physios and the management at Chelsea have worked that one out too. They can't just play Reece James 90 minutes twice a week immediately after him returning from injury. It's just not sensible, because they'll end up cutting their nose off to despite their face, and they'll lose despite their face, and they'll end up losing James for larger periods because he'll just get injured again. So, although I think Havertz will start, I do think there is a real possibility for James to not play. If I had to guess, gun to my head, is James going to start or not against Southampton? I would say yes, but I think we do have to acknowledge the possibility that James can potentially be rotated. Now, the problem, I don't know if it's a problem. I guess the thing about James is that he can just as easily score, a 1-pointer as a 15-pointer. So with Reece James, what you're really thinking is, I am going to take the 1-pointers because I know I'll also get the 15-pointers. I'm just going to take the ones, I'm going to take the 15s, and when we average them out, we're still on for some very, very good FPL scores. So if you are a Reece James owner, I really would not be thinking, maybe he's going to get rested, maybe he's going to get rotated. Don't think about that. Take the rest, take the rotations, and take them alongside the 15 pointers that he will get for you. So you can't really lose over a large period of time. So if you just stick with him over a larger period of time, you're going to be absolutely fine with Reece James. The problem is if you try to start second guessing when he's going to start, when he's not going to start, you might miss some 15 pointers and you might only get the 1-pointers. Just stick with him. Yeah, that's all I would say on that one. Finally, on Chelsea, I just want to say don't write off Southampton in this game either, because Chelsea have conceded a few goals recently. I'm not saying this is a trend or anything like that, but there could be a dip in form, a dip in confidence. There could be there's always a mistake in Mendy, as we kind of saw against Real Madrid. And Southampton are a kind of team that sometimes surprise you against the bigger teams. So you never know what's going to happen there, to be honest. But those two players in particular, Havertz and James, if they start, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Let's talk about Leicester quickly, because I know a lot of people are thinking about Leicester. I mean, I've got... where's my graphic? I'll have to make sure I don't leave this on screen. But there is actually a few changes to this graphic, by the way, or a few potential changes to this graphic. But I'm just going to use it for the purpose of looking at the Leicester fixtures for now. Because I think Leicester's fixtures are pretty much locked in at this point. I would say that those fixtures you see for Leicester on screen now, I would be pretty confident about all of them happening. So, we've got 3 double game weeks. We've got the first in game week 33, which is against Newcastle and Everton, which is a really, really nice combo. We've got game week 36, which is a double game week against Everton and Norwich, both at home. That is an insane combination of fixtures. I'm sure you guys will agree with me. That is wicked. We want to get in on that somehow, right? And then finally, in game week 37, we will have Watford and Chelsea, 2 away games. Watford, a good fixture. Chelsea, not such a good fixture, but, it could be a little bit worse, and it's still part of a double. So it's a double game week still. You're still going to get some points from that, aren't you? Even if it's just appearance points, assuming there's not too much rotation. So, what do I want to say about Leicester? Well, I do want to say that both Harvey Barnes and James Maddison both played 90 minutes on Thursday. So that was only yesterday. It was only last night. They played 90 minutes in their Europa Conference League game against PSV. They did draw that game 0-0. So it was 0-0, wasn't it? Unless I've got that. No, I think it was 0-0. Unless my memory has gone completely mad. So the second leg, that's going to be really important for Leicester, because they didn't get a win in the first leg. What you would have hoped for, really, was for Leicester to, go a couple of goals up and maybe take off a Barnes or a Maddison at, the 70-minute mark. At that point, you'll be pretty confident that these players are going to start again in the Premier League, I suppose. There's a super chat from Cameron. Super chat, guys, I'm going to wait until the end of this section talking about teams and then I'll go back to your super chat. So if you are putting a super chat in, I will come back to you. Don't worry, I'm not ignoring you. And I can see there's a shout out to a member as well, which is also Cameron. So Cameron, I will get back to you in a moment. I'm just going to go through Leicester a little bit more. So anyway, Leicester, these Leicester players, Barnes, Maddison, played 90 minutes on Thursday, and since Leicester kind of have nothing to play for, you would say, in the Premier League, I mean, they're not going to get relegated, they're not going to get European games. How important is this Premier League game against Crystal Palace for Leicester? It's not important, and that's not to say that players are just going to down tools and that everyone's going to be rotated, but there is going to be a certain degree of prioritisation for Leicester. The Europa Conference League is going to be the priority. That is a fact. That is going to be the priority competition. So if there is going to be a rotation, if there is going to be a competition where the team is weaker, it is going to be in the Premier League. So Barnes, Maddison, since they both played 90, you wouldn't be completely surprised if one of them didn't start. If both of them didn't start, I would be surprised. But if one of Barnes or Maddison didn't start this game week, you wouldn't be surprised. And for that reason, I am kind of going off the idea of bringing in either of those players this game week. If you already have them, you already have them. But would I be bringing them in? I'm not really sure. I also want to talk about their defenders, because I know, primarily people are going for Barnes and Maddison. I do want to talk about the defenders as well, because a lot of people are kind of looking at the Leicester defenders. And why not? Some of these fixtures are really good. The 2 main centre-backs are back, which are Evans and Fofana. Evans and Fofana are really good centre-back pairing, who I think are actually going to significantly improve Leicester's defence. We're kind of already seeing signs of that. But I think there is going to be rotation, purely because there are so many options at centre-back that it is very difficult to pick one that is just going to start every game. We've got, obviously, Evans and Fofana, but we've also got Soyuncu, he is back. We've got Amati, who's played very well, and we've got Vestergaard, who is, probably not going to play, to be fair, but he is still there. So there is 5 centre-backs competing for 2 spots. Now, I'm not saying that, they're going to play equal games in equal parts, 1 game each, but what we will see is a bit of rotation there, a little bit of disappointment there, and when that will likely be is in a double game week. So say you went for a Fofana, for example, in a double game week. Fofana might start the first game, but the second game would then be primed for him to then be rotated, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of going for these Leicester players with the intention of targeting a double game week. If they don't have a double game week anyway, you may as well go for a single game week player who has a better fixture, who plays for a better defence, etc, etc, etc. Also, the fullbacks, I know a lot of you guys will be hyped up about the Leicester fullbacks. Who have we got? We've got Justin, we've got Castagna, we've got Pereira, we've got Luke Thomas. They're all great options. But if they're all great options, that means they can't all play. Again, we've got the same situation. There's four fullbacks competing for 2 slots. So again, we're going to see a little bit of rotation there. So in terms of defence, Schmeichel is, to me, the only safe player, seemingly. Schmeichel is the only Leicester defender. Well, I mean, to be fair, Schmeichel is the only Leicester player, full stop, that I would even, be comfortable buying in right now. Which is a shame, because Leicester have all of these beautiful double game weeks that you can see on screen, and we have only really got Schmeichel, who's nailed on, just because of this Europa Conference League, which is going to be the sole focus, well, the main focus of Leicester City Football Club. And that's the situation. Quick shout out to Iheanacho, by the way, who is a terrible, terrible buy. I say it's a terrible buy. He's one that could come off, but there is going to be rotation. Because Leicester are kind of playing with one forward at the moment, we're probably going to see rotation, Iheanacho and Daka, Vardy when he comes back as well. There's going to be a situation there. And particularly, when we get to game week 36, 37, when Leicester have the rest of their doubles, maybe Vardy is back by that point, in which case, Iheanacho is competing with 2 players for that forward slot. And, Vardy is probably going to be the guy who comes up trumps. So, I mean, maybe one to keep an eye on Vardy. But again, we've got to think rotation. That is going to be the situation. Will Jones in the chat said Dewsbury Hall. Yeah, I mean, the good thing about Dewsbury Hall is that he is so cheap, and because he is a young player, they're probably more willing to give him time in the Premier League, where it's not so important. The pressure is off him a little bit to try and develop that player a little bit. So Dewsbury Hall, because of his cheap price, he's not a bad shout to have. So, there we go. That is Leicester. And finally, I just want to talk about Burnley very, very, very briefly. And then we'll talk about some other stuff other than teams in general. So, Burnley, there are murmurings around Burnley fans. This is fans. This is not rumours. There's no inside information, but there is murmurings around Burnley fans about Weghorst potentially being dropped, which I can kind of understand. He has been really, really out of form. And I do also wonder if Roberts could potentially be rotated with Lowton. We saw Roberts come off fairly early in the game. Well, not fairly early. What was it? About 60 minutes in that Everton game, Lowton came on. Roberts was a little bit exposed. I really like Roberts, though, because, I really hope he plays, because what I kind of saw from Roberts in that game is when Burnley were playing some slightly more progressive football, which is rare in itself. Roberts was actually making inside runs on that right hand side, and kind of Lennon was going out wide. Roberts was coming inside and kind of playing the Trent Alexander-Arnold Cancelo type position, which I know Roberts is not quite a Cancelo or a Trent, but there we are. Count Sealor says, I've not heard such rumours. Like I say, they are not rumours. They are calls. They are calls for Weghorst to be dropped among Burnley fans. There is no rumour there. There are calls for him to be dropped. And I'm just saying that I would not be totally surprised if that happened. Because Rodriguez obviously got his goal. Was it Rodriguez who got the goal? Yeah, I think it was. And Cornet cannot play up front. He can play as a striker very well. And I do genuinely believe that Cornet is Burnley's best player. I mean, every time I watch, you guys know I'm a massive Cornet fanboy. We won't go into that one anymore. But yeah, I guess quick note on Cornet. He's an absolute legend. He is an absolute legend. So there we go. Those are the teams I want to talk about today. I don't think there's any other teams we need to talk about in too much detail this game week. But yeah, I'm just going to go through the super chats that we have received. Wow, we have got 1,000 of you guys in here today, which is pretty good for a stream in the middle of the day. I thank you guys for whether you're at work, whether you're in different time zones. I don't know what time it is where you guys are at, but thank you for joining me today. I do really appreciate it. So yeah, we got a membership from Cameron Starr. So thank you for becoming a member of the channel. Enjoy the use of the emojis, and also a super chat from Cameron as well, saying finally have enough to super chat you. Fantastic streamer, fantastic person. Never change. You're at 100k for a reason. Best fantasy football streamer going. Take care. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. I do try my best, and hopefully we're making some good stuff for you guys. That's all I'm hoping for, that we're making some okay stuff. Thomas Jones in the super chat as well says, congrats on the rank and fingers crossed you keep getting higher. Oh man, fingers crossed indeed, Thomas. I'm going to need a lot of luck, that's for sure. And he said, if you have Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robbo, Doherty, James and Cancelo, who would you bench? That's a really tricky one. Now, if I'm not thinking about effective ownership, I would bench Cancelo. If I had to guess who is going to be the 4 highest scoring defenders out of those 4, and they are the big 4, aren't they? Trent, Robbo, Doherty, James and Cancelo. They're the big 5 at the moment, aren't they? The big 5 defenders. Who do I think is going to score lowest of the 5? This game week, I think it's going to be Cancelo. However, due to effective ownership, I would be more tempted to actually bench Robbo, because a Man City clean sheet or a Cancelo return would hurt you far more than if you missed out on a Robbo clean sheet and a Robbo return just because you have Trent Alexander-Arnold to cover that. So the sensible answer is to bench Robertson. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with that at all. You know, you're talking about a situation where you have to do something. I'm not comfortable with benching Robertson, but if you had to bench one of those 5, he would be the sensible one. Although if you're asking me who do I actually think is going to get the least amount of points, then my answer is Cancelo. Food for thought. Food for thought. Right, guys. Next up, I do want to talk about Tierney replacements. So we do know that Tierney, very unfortunately, has picked up an injury, which is likely to rule him out for the season. It's not looking good. We have got an Arteta press conference in about an hour's time as well. So maybe we'll get an exact idea, but it's going to be months at the minimum. He's very unlikely he plays again this season. We do want to remove him. If you've got him, you want to remove him. So, replacements. There are 3 players that I really like the look of for Tierney replacements. Now, first of all, Matt Doherty. If you have Matt Doherty, then fair enough, you can't bring him in. But if you don't have Matt Doherty, then I think you're going to need him. This Aston Villa fixture for Doherty is okay. But after that, man, let's actually find the player. Where is he? There he is. Man. I mean, Aston Villa's not even that bad. But after that, Brighton at home, that's a clean sheet, and that is goal contributions for him. Brentford away, same again. Leicester at home, clean sheet a little bit more tentative, but you would definitely bag goal returns from Doherty there as well. The double game week is against Liverpool and Arsenal. Now, given the form that Spurs are in, there is no reason to suggest that their assets cannot score points even in a tough double game week. And I just want to put that out there. I know they're bad fixtures, but I kind of been banging the drum about this because City are playing Liverpool, obviously. I've kind of been banging the drum of top players and top teams will still perform in big games. And I use the example of Karim Benzema against Chelsea in the midweek. If you're like if you've got Benzema against Chelsea, or you've got you've got Weghorst against like Macclesfield Town, you still go for Benzema, because even though you would say that Weghorst playing against Macclesfield is probably an insanely good fixture, the quality of the player is not the same. So good players, good teams will perform against other good teams. It happens. Benzema scored a hat-trick against Chelsea. Chelsea are meant to be one of the best defences in world football, right? Top players, top teams perform in the big games. That's what happens. That's why Salah is can easily get points against City. It's why Trent and Robbo and Cancelo, KDB, can easily get these points. So, don't worry about that double game week too much. Not too much. Would he be first on my list for that game week? No. But, you'd hold him through it because, look at 37 and 38. Burnley at home, Norwich away. Spurs are going to be, maybe even playing for goal difference to get into the Champions League. Those two games are going to be insane. Kane, Son, Kulusevski, Doherty, these players are going to be an absolute madness. They really are. So, he would be probably my primary replacement for Tierney. The most easy replacement. We've got Reece James for his upside. I think that's a good pick as well. So Reece James definitely one to consider. Not 100% nailed, but he's got that potential to score 15 pointers out of nowhere, which is absolutely insane for fantasy. He's a great football player as well. And we've got Fabian Schär as well, who I think is worth a mention just because if we just bring this up again, we have got this Wolves game at home, decent chance for clean sheet, and then we've got a double game week against Leicester and Crystal Palace, pretty good as well, and then Norwich in 34. So the next 3 game weeks for Newcastle, actually looking pretty sweet, pretty sweet indeed, and 3 of the next 4 are home games as well, which is a huge advantage. Newcastle have performed very well at home, certainly since January. So yeah, excellent stuff from Newcastle. Fabian Schär is playing well. He's nailed on in the side. He is taking free kicks. He is going up for corners. He is making darting runs up the pitch for absolute no apparent reason. And that's all good for fantasy points. So we like Schär a lot. And he is super cheap, 4.3 million. You can't really go wrong. So you can just bench him for the rest of the season if you wanted to do that after the Norwich game. But certainly next 3 looking really good for Schär. Definitely it would be on my watch list. Now, the other players you'd really think about for bringing in as defenders are Trent, Robbo and Cancelo. If you're missing any of those 3, you would probably be thinking about getting those in at some point or another. You guys know it as well as I do. Although we can say, yeah, we trust these players even in the big games, you're probably not going to buy them for these games. You're probably just going to wait 1 more week before bringing in a player like that. So in that sense, this is probably not the game week to replace Tierney with one of Cancelo or a Liverpool defender. I'd be far more confident in Doherty, James, or Schär. Those are the 3 players I would go for. I would also say, I know a few people are probably looking to get Leicester players. Like I said earlier, there's just rotation risk for Leicester defenders. It's a little bit too much for me. If you really want to go for it. Go for a Leicester defender, see what happens. But it's not for me. So next. Actually, just going back to that, Tierney replacements points, that covers all bases. I think just go for one of those 3. If you want to just spend roughly the same money as Tierney costs anyway, Doherty is your answer. If you have a little bit of money spare and you want to make an upgrade, James is your answer. If you want to downgrade or you don't have any money or you want to actually free up some money, then Schär is a really good answer there. And I don't really see why I would go for any other players outside of that. Those are the 3 players. You've got 3 different scenarios depending on which one you're in. Just pick one. Just pick one depending on what your personal situation is. Right. So we talk about selling Salah. I see a few of you in the chat, and I hadn't written this down to potentially talk about, but I've seen a few of you in the chat talk about selling Salah. It's an option. Right, guys. I want to cast our eyes over to this tweet that I saw from Fantasy Football Scout Luke, and he also did a great rundown. I don't know if you guys watch FPL Black Box on YouTube, but they also did he did a great rundown of this with Az on a few days ago as well, talking about Salah and the performances of Salah. So what we can see from this data, I'll try and translate this into English rather than nerd speak, because I am fluent in both, funnily enough. But basically, and if you understand what this means, that means you're a nerd, by the way. If you can understand what you're seeing in front of you right now, you are an FPL nerd. Wear that badge with pride. So basically what we're seeing here is that in the first half of the season, Mo Salah got 22 goals and assists. His expected goal involvement, so his expected goals/assists was 0.73 per game. So he was expected to get 0.73 goals or assists per game. That's really good. But actually what we saw was he was overperforming that by 0.45. So he was actually getting, let's do the maths very quickly, and I'm guaranteed to butcher this, 1.18. Is that right? Have I got that right? Yes, I have. 1.18. So he was actually getting, even though he was expected to get 0.73 goals or assists per game, he actually got 1.18 goals or assists per game. So that is a significant overperformance. You know, it's an overperformance by over 50%. He was overperforming his stats. He was converting chances that he had no right to convert because he's a quality player. And the assists that he was creating as well, his teammates were finishing them off at a higher rate than expected. That's what we were seeing in the first half of the season. Now, if you look since game week 19, so game week 19 to 31, during this time, and this is the important stat because I've seen a lot of people putting stats out there of how well Salah's done in the first half of the season compared to the second half of the season, not really considering the fact that the second half of the season isn't even finished yet. We're only halfway through the second half of the season, so that's kind of an unfair comparison. And also, you've got to take into consideration Salah's minutes, his disappearance to AFCON, and stuff like that, and the fact that he has been he's had to be rotated a little bit and rested a little bit more, and that has impacted his stats and made them look a little bit worse than they actually are. But even so, if you look at this, Mo Salah, game week 19 to 31, 9 starts. He's had, and by the way, this is non-penalty. This is non-penalty because penalties occur randomly. So we don't like to take too much into consideration when it comes to penalties. They will happen randomly and they will happen. So non-penalty goals and assists in 9 starts, 3. That doesn't make for good reading, right? It doesn't. But if we go to the next line down, 0.97 non-penalty expected goal involvement. So he's been expected to get 0.97 goals or assists per game. He is not actually getting that. He's got a minus 0.61 delta. So his actual goals, his actual non-penalty goal involvement per game is 0.36. So he hasn't been performing to his stats. Now, if he can get to his level, and it's not a far stretch to say that he could. If he can get to his level that he was at the beginning of the season and is overperforming in the way that he was earlier on in the season, he is going to do even better than he was doing at the beginning of the season. If he wants to match his numbers from earlier on in the season, he doesn't have to be as clinical. He doesn't even have to be as clinical as he was earlier in the season because he's actually getting more chances. He's getting more chances. He's more likely to get, being involved in goals. He is being more creative. He is, taking more shots on. He's in those dangerous positions. And fair enough, he has not been finishing recently. He hasn't. We've all seen it. We've all seen it, right? He's not been at his best. Let's be real. But he's not going to be not at his best forever. Think about Heung-min Son. 3 game weeks ago, what were we saying about Son? We were saying, why have we got Son? Let's switch him for Kane. Kane is clearly so much better. Son is clearly out of form. The following 2 game weeks, he scores 12 points in one, 14 points in one, 12 in the other, or something like that, right? Gets back-to-back 10-pointer hauls because Son is good. He's a good player. Salah is a good player. Just because a player goes off it for a few games, it doesn't suddenly mean they're a bad player. And they will get back to their best. And they always do. When you look at these really large samples of data, there is always going to be brief periods. When you kind of use small data, you're going to see brief periods where the player is not doing everything that you want them to do. That's part of football. That players cannot just bang constantly. So, look, Salah is still getting chances to score. He just needs to find his mojo again. And with Liverpool in the title race, there is all the reason for him to get his, all the motivation is there. There may be outside factors that are affecting his performance. I don't want to read into that too much, but he could get back. And remember, guys, we've got City, we've got United next. Let me cast your eyes to the last time Salah played these two teams, and this is where I go back to big players performing in big games. Against Manchester City, 13-pointer. Against Manchester United, do you remember this one, guys? Havertz captain us in Game Week 9, will remember, 24-pointer. So, big players perform in big games. Just because it's not a Norwich, just because it's not a Watford, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to get FPL points. So, I mean, if I haven't made it painfully obvious yet, I think Salah is a keep. If I'm completely honest, I'm not going to be selling Salah. I can't do it. I've looked at things. I've looked at maybe doing the hokey cokey, taking Salah out and back in again. I can't do it. Now that, on the other hand, all of that said, and I did just say a lot. And by the way, a good point raised, and I was saying maybe there's outside factors. ZHJ, sorry for that, I don't know how to say that, I do apologise. But ZHJ in the chat says, I think Ramadan and international disappointment will take its toll. And I didn't want to mention that because I don't want to speculate on these things, to be honest, because it's not really right for me to speculate, I suppose. But Ramadan, fasting, Egypt losing AFCON, not making it to the World Cup final. Is he sad? You know, is sadness a factor? Maybe, but he's a professional sports person. How long is even if assuming that is the case, which I don't believe is too much of a factor, you know, that sadness is not going to last forever, you know, and, you know, the elation of Liverpool lifting the Premier League trophy again, I'm sure is you know, definitely something that Salah will be wanting to do, getting the Golden Boot, getting the, you know, winning the Premier League with Liverpool, winning some other competitions with Liverpool. Liverpool are still in all of the competitions still. And that, those kind of things, what better to lift a man, right, as a football player. So, yeah. Now, I was going to say, there are reasons to sell Salah. One of the reasons to sell Salah is if you were planning on a wild card, and if you have a wild card in the back pocket, you're planning on a wild card in Game Week 34, for example, which is a great game week to wild card. I'll put the fixtures back on screen just so you can kind of see the swings of things. I have seen the super chat, by the way. I will get to it. If you kind of look at, well, not just the swings, but also the fact that we'll know for certain this predicted fixture schedule will be finalised by the Game Week 34 deadline. So a great time to wildcard. Now, if you are planning on wildcarding in 34, I can see why you would sell Salah as a kind of risky, bold strategy. I can see why you do that. Because we've got Bruno Fernandes plays 3 games in you know, plays an additional game. You can maybe go to you know, De Bruyne if you fancy him. You can maybe go to Heung-min Son if you've already got Kane and you want to double up on Spurs. All perfectly viable. I can see it is very possible for KDB, for Bruno, for Cristiano Ronaldo, for Son, these other premium assets over the next 2 game weeks. It is entirely feasible for those guys to outscore Salah. It's so possible. It's so possible. So if you want to take a punt on that happening, and you on a punt on that possibility, and you're going to be bringing Salah back in Game Week 34, then okay, go for it. Go for that risky strategy. I actually don't mind that strategy at all, particularly if you're trying to chase rank and trying to make a big difference in mini leagues, for example. Go for it. Absolutely go for it. But what you will be depending on is this kind of notion that Salah is going to come back to form at a certain point. You would be rolling the dice and hoping that Game Week 34 would be the game week that Salah gets back to business. You think, yeah, Salah's still going to be poor. He's not going to quite find his form in 32. He's not going to quite find his form in 33. But 34, that's going to be the one he's going to find his form again. You don't know if that's going to happen. He could find his form in 32. He could find his form in 33. He could find his form in 38. We don't know. And even if he doesn't, even if he takes that long, because you've got penalties, because you've got getting so many chances, he is still going to score over this period of time. You know, there's no doubt about that. He is going to get FPL points. No matter how bad his form is, he's going to get FPL points. But yeah, if you're taking out Salah with the intention of bringing him in later, you're going to have to basically be lucky when you bring him back in. Because if you wait till after he hits the form, after he's just scored a 15-pointer, then you've already kind of lost. You know, if you decide to bring Salah back in game week 34 because you've seen, oh, Salah's back in form, I'm going to bring him in for 34. That's probably because he's just scored a 15-pointer in game week 33, which you've just lost out on. So it is a hopeful strategy. It is a strategy where you're making a calculated risk, but you have to acknowledge that there is a risk there. So there we go. I'm not going to talk about Salah anymore. I'm sure that is quite enough Salah chat. But yeah, just some things to consider. I can't believe... I planned out some topics to speak about. It turns out that the topics are pretty much taking up the entire stream because we've only... Well, if we're going for an hour, we've only got 13 minutes left. So, yeah, let's whiz through. So, because we've got super chats to catch up on as well. So let's go whiz through the super chats quickly. We've got Varun who says, would you rather do Robbo and Saka to Doherty and any midfielder up to 9 million or a -4... for a -4, or free swap Dennis and Mateta. Have one free hit and a bench boost wildcard in 30. I don't think I would take out Robbo and Saka. No, I don't think I would do that. If you have one, we don't have a free transfer. I would just roll that transfer. To be honest, I don't think you need to make any of those moves unless you have to, unless you find yourself in a situation where you're having to play Dennis anyway. If you have to play Dennis and you need just an additional player in your team, then maybe make the Dennis to Mateta swap. But if not, I don't think you need to make a transfer at all. I think you're fine with what you've got. Robbo and Saka are just fine assets. You know, Saka against Brighton, I think could do actually pretty well. Mason says, choose between Maddison, Barnes and Havertz. If I had to choose one, I would probably go for Havertz. So there we go. And yeah, that's the super chats done. Hopefully, thank you guys for the super chats, by the way. I do really appreciate it. It really helps support the channel and stuff like that. And members, of course, members of the channel, really appreciate you guys as well. Right, captains. I'm going to try and go a bit faster, guys, and then I maybe can try and answer some non-super chat questions at the end. But I don't want this stream to go on longer than an hour because I want it to be watchable or rewatchable. Right, captains. Kane is probably your best option. Great form. And Aston Villa are kind of a little bit out of it. So I do think if you have Kane, he is the solution. Kane is going to be the most popular captain this game week as well. So, you know, that is the safe and sensible captain is to go for Harry Kane. If you haven't got Kane, but you have got Heung-min Son, I think that's a pretty good captaincy as well. Son has been in really good form. And I know a few people will say, well, Son hasn't really been doing it in the away games. But if I'm completely honest, I try not to pay too much attention to the home versus away stats, really. Because over large periods of time, there's usually not actually that much in it. If you take large amounts of data over large sustained periods of time, there's not really that much difference. So, yeah, Son, perfectly good captaincy option as well. Now, if you have Ronaldo, if you have Bruno Fernandes, they are fantastic options as well for this game week. A little bit differential because not many people will even own these players. But, you know, Everton have been quite shocking. I mean, that's probably the understatement of the century. They have been quite shocking, and United are going to desperately need a result. Ronaldo coming back, I think, is going to help United a lot. So Ronaldo I actually quite like for a captain this game week, and if I had Ronaldo in my team, I think I would seriously consider him for captain. In fact, I may even, particularly if I'm trying to go for something a little bit different, I would seriously consider Ronaldo as a captain, but I don't have him. So Bruno, not as much as Ronaldo, but he is an option there. We've got Saka, if you want to go for a bit of differential. Like I say, Saka is a really good option for this game week, and this Brighton game is a really good fixture for Arsenal, and I'm expecting them to bounce back and score a couple of goals. You can see a 2-0 there, or maybe even more. You never know. Salah, like I said, even though he's against Man City, if you think the Man City game is going to be the game for him to come into form once more, and it could happen. It could happen. Salah is a captain option. I think a lot of people will still go for Saka. I think people will back Saka despite the fixture. And I think fair play. Like I say, Benzema against PSG, Benzema against Chelsea are the two big recent examples of a player going nuclear even in difficult games. And Salah, you would say, or certainly we have been saying over the last year, haven't we, that Salah is on a level with Benzema. Both players fasting, both players on Ramadan. So, food for thought. And finally, a quick shout out to Maxwell Cornet because he's an absolute legend. If you want to go super differential and you want to join the Maxwell Cornet hype squad, then maybe you could captain him against Norwich away. You know, if we see the attacking Burnley we saw against Everton, really going for it, really trying to win the games, not just not lose games, then Cornet, my opinion, the best player, Burnley's best player. He's amazing. So yeah, there's the captain options. Kane and Son really are the obvious answers. If you have a Ronaldo or Bruno, I think they're worth considering. Salah, I think, is potentially worth considering as well. But, you know, he's not based on too much in terms of recent form. And Saka is probably the other player that you would consider. But that Crystal Palace result has put, I think, all of us off Arsenal assets a little bit. I mean, certainly enough that we wouldn't want to captain them necessarily. But Saka, Lacazette, Martinelli, I can see them getting some points this game week. I really can. And there we go. Those are the captains. So I was going to do score predictions. But I think maybe instead of score predictions, because we've gone on for so long, maybe we just do some general questions. I think we're just going to do some general questions and then wrap up in about 5 minutes' time, if that's okay, guys. We did get a super chat from Martin. Let's go for Martin. Martin de Kock. Bench 2, Robbo, Cancella, Mateta, and Barnes. You know what? You've really got bench 2 out of those 4. Jesus, how good is your squad? You've not got like a Weghorst or someone you can bench instead. Jesus. Robbo, Cancella, Mateta, and Barnes. I would probably bench... If you have Trent, I would bench Robbo. If you don't have Trent, I would bench Cancelo. And then I would probably bench Mateta. Because he's playing away. And Mateta at the end of the day, he is a cheap player. He is a cheap bench player. I know he's played pretty well, but he can only play 60-70 minutes per game. He is potentially going to be rotated. There's always that chance with Vieira. I know he's very much first choice, but there's that chance of rotation. He's not a player that you expect to go mad. He's playing against Leicester, which isn't too bad. I think I would play Barnes ahead of Mateta though. Even though Barnes has slight rotation risk as well, I would say Barnes' chances of starting are better than Maddison. So yeah, okay, so you're going to bench one of those 2 defenders. Bench Robbo if you have Trent. Bench Cancelo if you don't have Trent. And then between Mateta and Barnes, that's a bit of a coin toss, but I think I would bench Mateta and go for Barnes. Barnes' underlying stats are insane, by the way, guys. Insane. Josh said, I don't think Mateta's going to getting benched now. Yeah, I kind of agree with that one, to be honest. I kind of do agree with that. By the way, guys, on our deadline stream, which will be at 5:30 p.m. UK time later on. So what's that? 4 hours time. In 4 hours time, we'll be doing a bench list. So those of you guys who are unfamiliar with the bench list, you are in for a treat because it's just basically a little graphic I make on the fly that helps you with your bench dilemmas, and it is very, very helpful. And it hopefully answers all of your bench-related questions. That's the idea of it, anyway. All in one fell swoop. Right. What other questions have we got? I'm not going to do too many bench questions, I don't think, just because we are going to cover that in later stream. I don't know if you guys are actually going to be on that stream, but yeah, still. Best Coutinho replacement from Stretch Face. If you can get to Havertz, he's a player I would very much like to have. I would really like to have Havertz in my team, and you know what? In all honesty, I kind of find myself often looking through my own team, trying to figure out how I can get in Havertz. And I think the answer to that is going to be to take out Lacazette in game week 34, which, by the way, Chelsea could have a double game week in 34. It is possible. It is feasible. If they lose to Real Madrid, they could get a double game week in 34. Totally feasible. In which case, I would probably do a double transfer move of like Lacazette and probably Cornet, to be honest. We'll be ditching the legend himself in 34. Do Cornet and Lacazette to Havertz and probably Mateta. And just stick him on the bench. I have got some transfer plans, but I don't want to reveal too much yet because I've got so many different plans based on different scenarios. So I'm not going to commit to anything right yet. But that works within one of my transfer plans. Things change very quickly. E2, E5H says best under 7.5 forwards. The best forwards are the ones that cost the least amount of money because forwards are just not worth going for. We're all kind of switching to the 4-5-1 formation or the 5-4-1 formation. We just want one forward. We probably want that forward to be Kane. If not, Lacazette is okay at the moment just because they're a good fixture and a double game week next game week. And, Mateta is also a good option. So, aside from that, you pretty much just want to be benching everyone. So, if you're asking for a best under 7.5 forward, go all the way down to Mateta. You don't have to spend the money right now. You can spend the money later. And believe me, you can make a much better use of that money by investing in midfielders and defenders than you can in forwards. So, yeah, just ditch the expensive... Just ditch the expensive forwards. They're just not worth it. Don't even forget about them. David says Shaw versus Doherty. I like Doherty more for the long term. Over the next 2 game weeks, however, I do prefer Shaw. So it depends. Are you thinking long term? Are you thinking short term? Don't know. James says, why would you not play Weghorst over Cancelo? I have toyed with the idea, but Weghorst is just not that good. I think that's the reality of the situation. He's just not that good. He's not in good form. He is not showing. He hasn't for something like 9 game weeks consecutively. He's taking like 1 shot every other game. That is ridiculously poor numbers. Like, as a forward, you've got to at least be taking a shot or 2 per game, and Weghorst isn't even doing that. Like, it really is quite... It's quite crazy. SK10 here says, can you reveal those plans? Might make for some inspiration, no pressure on them working out. Yeah, this is probably not the stream for it, and I'm going to be closing down the stream in a couple of minutes anyway. The deadline stream is probably not the place for it either. When I will potentially talk about it is after the deadline, after the deadline passes in the deadline stream, or potentially in my strategy stream next week. Certainly by the time we hit the strategy stream next week on Monday, it'll probably be on Monday, I will have a much better idea of what I'm doing. So I will be able to talk with a little bit more confidence about some potential strategies that I have in tow. And to be honest, I'm quite excited by sharing that with you. I just don't think I don't want to overdo it talking about my own team. It's kind of selfish to just talk about my own team. My job here really is to be trying to help you guys out the best of my ability, really, rather than just kind of egotistically dwelling on my own team. But if you guys will find it helpful, and I'm sure you would, we will talk about it at the appropriate time. Harry Chu says, which Palace defender to go for, Dan? None. I don't think I would go for any, really. I mean, maybe if I had to go for one, I'd go for Tyrick Mitchell, but I would not be going for a Palace defender over a Doherty, over a Reece James, over a Fabian Schär. I wouldn't be going for them. Yash says, what time is the deadline stream? It will be in 4 hours' time, so 5:30 British summertime. So, 4 hours from now, I'll be ramping up the deadline stream. Chris says, best long-term budget midfielder under 6 million. Potentially looking at a Martinelli there. I know Kulusevski is slightly over now, isn't he? So, yeah, we're potentially looking at Martinelli for a cheap defender. And there we go, guys. I'm going to wrap it up here. I'm sorry if I haven't been able to answer all of your questions. Hopefully I answered a few that were kind of useful. And possibly I answered some of them earlier on in the stream. So if you have joined this stream late, do feel free to watch the replay, because I do think this is actually going to be quite a good one to watch back if you didn't catch it all, because I think there was some quite useful information in this stream, or at least I hope so. That was kind of the hope from making this one. Guys, if you wouldn't mind liking the stream before you disappear, or if you're watching this as a video, as a stream replay, please do like, massively appreciated. Guys, if you wouldn't mind subscribing as well, that would be absolutely awesome. Haven't really got any subscriber goals. I mean, maybe we can hit 115,000 subscribers reasonably soon. That would be pretty wicked if we could do that today. I think it's possible to do it today, actually, to be honest. Or maybe, do we already hit it? No, probably not. But anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up now. I will see you guys in 4 hours' time for a deadline stream. Hopefully, loads of you guys can make it. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff as we approach the deadline. But that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Really do appreciate the hell out of you guys. And I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.